Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest in this topic. My name is Jeannie Love. I'm a neurodiversity consultant and coach with over 20 years of experience teaching and coaching individuals with ADHD and autism. Through my business, Beyond Coaching, I partner with organizations to unlock the strengths of their neurodivergent employees. My goal is to help you understand and apply practical strategies for supporting cognitive diversity in your organization. This is Neurodiversity Insights in 20, and it's designed to give you impactful and manageable information in a short amount of time. And I will stick around at the end for any questions if you want to bring me questions, challenges, or any case studies you're encountering. The session today is the invisible challenges, why some of your best employees are struggling and what to do about it. Because here's the truth, your business is missing out on untapped potential because our systems are not built for neurodivergent employees. You're seeing things like missed deadlines, communication gaps, and underperforming talent. And it's easy to assume that these are individual performance issues. But what if the real issue isn't the person, but the way we structure our work? So in this session, we're going to break down some of what's happening, why it matters, and I'll give you some small shifts to help you create a more productive, engaged, and inclusive workplace. Here are our goals. Number one, that you'll see what you've been missing. Recognize the hidden challenges holding back some of the people on your team, their performance, their engagement, and ultimately their retention. That you'll leave here with some simple, high impact strategies you can apply immediately with no major overhauls, no extra budget, just small, smart adjustments, practical wins. And then turning awareness into action because we know that knowing is not enough. These sessions aren't just about understanding neurodiversity, but getting some strategies to leverage it for better outcomes. Because what you don't see matters. Not all challenges are visible. In every workplace, there are talented, capable employees struggling with barriers that are likely going unnoticed. Their challenges aren't obvious, but the impact is real on their productivity, their confidence, and their ability to perform. The neurodiversity is often described as a hidden or invisible disability because the traits of some of the neurotypes like dyslexia, ADHD, and autism don't necessarily manifest in a way that is easy to recognize. Unlike some physical disabilities, some of those are much more apparent. Neurodivergence is in the brain, beneath the surface, affecting the way our people think, learn, communicate, and solve problems. And so through this session, I hope that you'll learn that the goal isn't to fix neurodivergent employees. They've actually been trying to fix themselves their entire lives, even likely when they were in elementary school. Our goal is to create an environment where we support these challenges through some strategies so that they can bring their best to the workplace. So I want to talk briefly about spiky profiles, and I'll come back to this in more depth in a later session. So please don't get caught up in any of the labels around either of these rings. That's not the point of today. What I want you to think about is a conversation that I often have and had recently with a manager who was telling me about a specific employee. And the manager's comment was, I should probably just fire her, but she does this one thing so incredibly well. And as I'm speaking to this manager, I'm like, yep, that's what this is, spiky profiles. If we look here at the left, our neurotypical, our regular employee is very well-rounded. They have all these skills and they fall in these middle rings, very average. Not really any significant challenges, but also not really any significant strengths that they're bringing. And wherever they do encounter a challenge, they can kind of figure it out pretty easily. But sometimes we have people on our teams that are more spiky. And what that means is that they bring these challenges because of the way that their brain is wired, but that also they can bring some pretty awesome strengths that this neurotypical person isn't bringing. And so when I hear a manager say, but there's this one thing that they do so incredibly well, and that's why we keep them on, that's these outer spikes. And what can we do to support where they're struggling here, these valleys? We are going to dip our toe in at an incredibly surface level with three of the most common neurotypes: dyslexia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, or autism, or ASD. And I want to be really explicit and really clear here. It is not our job to diagnose anyone. In fact, what I'm going to share with you is just a surface level few common characteristics of each of these. But if you want to dive more in depth, then that's a different conversation. Please feel free to reach out to me and we can do that. So I want to be really explicit here. We are not diagnosing anyone, and the strategies and the challenges that I'm going to share with you will not be the same for everyone who has this neurotype. So please just be cautious of the little bit of information can be dangerous, and don't use this as broad sweeping information for you to support your people. Okay, with that being said, the first is dyslexia. So people who are dyslexic, they have challenges in reading, spelling, and writing. They will likely have challenges making sense of complex written instructions and text-heavy resources. If you are neurotypical and you read fluently without any challenges, you are not thinking about reading when you're reading. It's just going in, and what you're thinking about is how to connect the ideas into a map or a web or in some useful form. But imagine if you actually have to think about individual words as you read. It's going to make it much more challenging to put all of those thoughts, all of the content together into a meaningful way. So they will have challenges with lengthy, complex written material, as well as spelling and grammar, so in the writing that they produce. Some strategies to support them: leave voice memos and allow them to leave voice memos for you. Use bullet points. So when you write the content, also include the big ideas, the next steps, the follow through, so that they can use that as a guide for, evaluating the context. Like, I know the big ideas, now I can go back and read the rest of the material for better understanding. Use clear fonts, nothing fancy, and provide them with AI tools or technology to help them with their reading. So it will read the content to them, but also that they can speak into, and it will produce the writing for them. With these challenges with dyslexia, you're going to see people who likely avoid emails. So a lot to comprehend in the reading, and then the writing to turn back out. They may be slower to produce reports, likely slower to respond to instant messaging. Just imagine the amount of stress for reading the messages that come in and then preparing your response, and something new comes in that you have to make sense of, and you're just trying to get your response out. That can be incredibly stressful. And it's possible then that these people will get overlooked for leadership roles because their written work isn't polished or the timeline isn't just exactly how we want it. It looks like a performance issue, but it's not. It's literally the way that their brains are wired. So I'm going to pause here for a minute, and I'd like you to think about the work in your department, people that you manage. How might having dyslexia impact them in their work? Okay, let's move on to our next neurotype, which is ADHD. Again, a very surface level overview of some of the challenges they may encounter. Excuse me. The first two actually go with the name, attention deficit, which a lot of people are having conversation around right now because it's not a deficit of attention. It's an overabundance of attention. There's so much information coming in from all their senses and from all the angles. And for those of us who are neurotypical, we can tune some of that information out in order to be able to focus on what we want to focus on. But for someone who has ADHD, it's harder to tune that information out. And so this looks like distractibility. It pulls their attention away, or impulsivity because all of a sudden something new has come up and they feel that they need to respond to that. A reason why instant messaging might be really challenging for someone who has ADHD because it's constantly pulling their attention away, their focus away. People with ADHD are often really big idea thinkers. So they have really creative, wild, big ideas. It's why we see a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs who have ADHD. Really great big ideas, but it can be really difficult to break it down into all of its steps, set realistic timelines to those steps, excuse me, and follow through on each of those without getting distracted. It may also be difficult for them to pay strict attention to detail, excuse me. They may miss details in breaking it down into its smallest steps. So, what can you do to support them? Work with them to set clear deadlines and accountability check-ins. Without micromanaging, just meet with them, help them to set those deadlines, and then just check in to make sure the progress is being made. Flexible workflows. This is where we really pay more attention to the end product than in the process that they used to get there. We have a tendency to, and a lot of neurotypical people are able to move at a pretty steady pace throughout their day to get their work done. But someone who has ADHD might have intensive periods of hyper focus where they're just completely immersed in their work, and that can also be exhausting. So then there is a little bit more time needed to recover from that. So it can look like bursts of work followed by pauses of not working. So how can we focus more on the end result and less on what it looks like to get there? And they'll benefit from quiet and reliable spaces to work. Quiet to minimize the distractions, and reliable to help them with the focus. I had a coaching client a few years ago, and they were returning to the office a few days a week after COVID. And they were incredibly stressed because they didn't have their own workspace. And so each day was a surprise where they were going to be working. Were they going to be able to find what are those distraction-free places? And then all the effort to get the space set up so that they're ready to work. It's a lot of energy and a lot of effort, where if they'd had their own space that was always set up exactly the way that they needed it, they were going to be more efficient. I'm going to pause here. Oh, there was one sort of conclusion I wanted to say, which is that ADHD employees are insanely productive in the right environment. But if it's not set up well, it's going to look like missed deadlines, forgotten tasks, and getting stuck in a cycle of procrastination. So try these strategies and see what you get from that. I'm going to pause here and let you think about your team and the work that's required of them and how having ADHD might impact. Okay, and now we'll move on to autism. So again, just a couple of the potential challenges for someone who's autistic. One, adapting to change. They prefer to know exactly what's expected and routine. Making connections with the people around them and building relationships in our neurotypical way can be challenging. They prefer literal communication, the way that we communicate with them, and also the way that they communicate with us. Processing speed sometimes takes them a little longer to think, to connect all the thoughts, but when they do, it's really amazing. So creating a little extra time for them to think and then follow up with you. And then sensory sensitivity. So the information that's coming in from the lighting, through our eyes, what we hear, what we smell, the texture of the clothes that we wear, or the chair even that we sit in can challenge their nervous system. They also don't have as the ability to tune some of that information out as well as people who are neurotypical. So some strategies for you to think about: be very clear and direct in your communication, and then understand that they will also be direct with how they communicate with you, which can sometimes come across as a little abrasive in our culture. So where is there room to kind of check how you interpret someone who's communicating with you in a very direct way? Some extra time to think. I've given you pauses during this presentation to think, what would that be like? Or even just the opportunity to leave and come back at a later time to follow up with questions or thoughts or ideas. And very clear and explicit expectations so that everyone knows what to expect. And so I'll pause here again for another minute for you to think about your department, your team, the work that you are asking them to do, and how might having autism or being autistic impact them. Okay, we'll move on because there are companies that are getting this right and they're seeing higher productivity, lower turnover, and stronger teams. But when we don't support these hidden challenges, you might find yourself in this cycle and you probably already know it. So, first, the employee struggles and they're given feedback to improve in an area that has always been a challenge for them. So, instead of support, they're expected to fix it on their own, which they have been trying to do their entire lives. So, they can't. And then the team feels it. The colleagues start to pick up the extra work, or communication gets strained, and frustration builds. So then it falls to the manager and it brings more check-ins, more performance conversations, more time trying to solve an issue that you think is about motivation, but it is literally the way that their brain is wired. Eventually, it moves up to HR, and now we've got a stressed out, disengaged employee that's close to burnout. And this whole process of managing, documenting, and addressing these challenges takes a huge amount of time and energy and resources until finally we lose them. And then we go through the time, the energy, the resources to find and onboard someone new. And it would likely have been significant amount of less required, a significantly less amount of time and energy and resources to support them from the start. So I'll just leave you with this. None of the strategies that I gave you require a complete overhaul to make a difference. Small intentional shifts. So if you want any help with this, please reach out to me. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to chat with you. And if you'd like to stay on for a few minutes, I'll stop the recording and we can have a more personal conversation. Thank you, everyone.